Morning had dawned clear and cold, with a sharpness in the air that hinted that summer was finally coming to an end. At daybreak, 20 riders set forth. Among them rode Bran Stark, nervous with excitement. For the first time, he was old enough to witness the king's justice. Bran was only 7, but he desperately wanted to prove that he was no longer a little child. Old Nan had filled his head with stories of the Wildlings, cruel men who lived beyond the wall and served the mysterious king beyond the wall. The prisoner had been captured outside a small holdfast hidden among the hills. But when Bran finally saw the prisoner, he was nothing like the monster from Old Nan's stories. He was old and scrawny, hardly taller than Robb. His clothes were black, but they were torn, greasy, and worn from years of hardship. The breath of men and horses mingled in the freezing air as the prisoner was brought before Lord Stark. Robb and Jon sat tall and still on their horses. Bran sat between them, trying desperately to look as though he had seen such things before. Above them flew the banner of the Starks, a gray direwolf racing across an ice-white field. Bran looked at his father. Lord Eddard Stark seemed older that morning, his gray eyes hard and solemn. Bran thought of the father who spoke softly beside the fire, but that morning, father had put away his gentle face and become Lord Stark of Winterfell. Questions were asked and answers were given there, in the chill of morning. Bran tried to remember every word, but the cold, the fear, and the seriousness of the moment made the conversation difficult to follow. At last, Lord Stark reached his decision. The sentence was death. Bran's heart beat faster. The moment he had imagined as an adventure suddenly felt very different. He had expected to see a monster. Instead, he saw an old and tired man. That morning, Bran began to understand that justice was not a game. A lord's decisions carried a heavy price. Bran had ridden out that morning hoping to prove he was growing up. Instead, he learned what growing up truly meant. As they rode away, Bran remained quiet. The cold morning had given him something he would never forget, a first glimpse of the difficult world of grown men. The riders continued in silence, each man carrying the weight of what they had witnessed. Bran looked at Robb and wondered if his brother understood these things better than he did. Jon said nothing. His quiet expression made Bran wonder what his older brother was thinking. His pony moved steadily beneath him, carrying Bran deeper into the world of men. Bran looked back once at the holdfast before it disappeared behind the hills. Behind them, the holdfast stood silent beneath the cold northern sky. The hills stretched endlessly before them, wild and quiet beneath the fading summer. The wind grew colder, brushing Bran's face and reminding him that summer would not last forever. Lord Stark rode ahead in silence, his thoughts hidden behind a solemn face. Bran studied his father carefully, trying to understand the man beneath the title. Bran remembered evenings when his father spoke gently beside the fire. Those were the moments when Bran knew his father as a storyteller and a loving parent. But Bran now understood that his father carried two faces, father and lord. Being Lord Stark meant making decisions that were sometimes harder than any sword stroke. For the first time, Bran began to think about what duty truly meant. Robb rode ahead confidently, already beginning to resemble the warrior he would become. Jon remained nearby, quiet but watchful. Bran straightened his back. He would not let his brothers see how frightened he had been. The road carried them into a wide valley where the wind swept freely across the grass. The steady rhythm of hooves filled the silence. Above them, the dire wolf banner rode proudly with the wind. Bran wanted to ask Jon what he thought of the morning, but the words never came. Sometimes, Bran realized, there were no easy words for difficult things. The old stories of Wildlings returned to Bran's thoughts. Beyond the wall lay a world Bran knew only from stories. He could almost hear old Nan's voice telling her ancient tales beside the fire. But today, one of those stories had become frighteningly real. The man wore black, the color of the Night's Watch. His worn appearance spoke of years spent facing the terrible cold beyond the wall. Bran began to understand that the real world was more complicated than the stories told around a fire. Lord Stark gave a quiet command, and every man obeyed. The men moved with the calm discipline of those accustomed to difficult duties. Bran watched every movement, determined to remember the morning. His father's gray eyes revealed nothing of the struggle behind them. A lord could not simply choose what was easy. He had to carry the burden of his decisions. Little by little, Bran's nervous excitement gave way to quiet understanding. At last, the riders turned toward home. Far ahead, the towers of Winterfell appeared on the horizon. Bran could not stop thinking about the morning. He had left Winterfell as an excited child. He was returning with a little more understanding. Birdsong returned to the hills, breaking the silence of the road. The wind swept through the grass as though nothing unusual had happened. Around them, ordinary life continued, unaware of the difficult decision made that morning. Bran wondered how many people depended on decisions made by men like his father. Justice, Bran was beginning to learn, was heavier than a sword. His father remained silent. Bran wanted to ask him many questions, but he did not know how to ask them. For a while, the three brothers rode together without speaking. Their silence said more than conversation could. Around them, the season was changing. Summer had lasted 9 years, but even long summers eventually ended. Bran looked toward the sky and wondered what the coming season would bring. The cold seemed to promise that harder days would come. The Stark men rode onward, prepared for whatever the North might demand. Bran was still only a boy, but he had taken his first step toward understanding their world. The holdfast vanished from sight, but the memory of that place remained. It was Bran's first lesson in the responsibilities of a lord. A small piece of childhood had been left behind on that cold morning. At last, the gates of Winterfell opened before them. Home welcomed them with familiar walls and familiar faces. Bran climbed down from his pony, quieter than when he had left. He watched his father once more, still trying to understand him. Lord Stark returned to the castle, carrying the same burden he had carried out. Robb looked at Bran, perhaps noticing that something had changed. Jon said little, as usual, but Bran felt less alone. Life at Winterfell continued as it always had, but Bran carried the morning. That evening, the warmth of the fire reminded him of the father he knew before that day. He remembered old Nan's tales of wildlings, the wall, and ancient dangers. But now, Bran knew that stories could never tell the whole truth. The world was not simply divided between heroes and monsters. His father had taught him something without saying a word. A lord had duties that could not always be shaped by personal feelings. Bran was still 7 years old, but that day had made him feel a little older. Above Winterfell, the northern sky stretched endlessly toward the unknown. It was only the beginning of Bran's journey. Beneath the dire wolf banner, the Stark family prepared for whatever the future would bring. Bran had ridden out that morning as a frightened child, eager to witness a great event. He returned knowing that the world was far more serious, complicated, and dangerous than the stories he had once believed. And this was only the beginning.